What's going on, y'all? Johnny Wheeler Reacts. I'm Johnny Wheeler. Welcome back. I'm hoping y'all are having a great day. I have a suggestion from one of my UK friends. This is Guy Fawkes and the conspiracy of the gunpowder plot. I know a little bit about it. I know this is November the 5th, and I know that people in the UK, you guys out there, y'all celebrate it every year. This will be interesting. I know a little bit, like I said, I know a little bit about it, but this will be interesting. Give me a little more insight about it. So without any further ado, let's get into this, y'all.
Remember the 5th of November, the gunpowder, treason, and plot. I know of no reason why the gunpowder treason should ever be forgot.
I have heard that rhyme before. Yeah.
On November the 5th, 1605, 13 men plotted together to blow up the Palace of Westminster in London on the day when the most powerful men in England were set to meet at Parliament. The authorities learned about the plan through an anonymous letter, and the terrorists were stopped just in time. The man they encountered at the scene was Guy Fawkes, who had been guarding barrels of gunpowder in the basement below the palace. If you're an American, you probably know about Guy Fawkes from the movie V for Vendetta, and you most likely associate him with anarchy. This association has been pushed even more in recent years with the use of Guy Fawkes masks by the anonymous organization. If you're from the UK, you already know about Guy Fawkes Night, which is celebrated every November the 5th with a bonfire and fireworks. Nearly everyone has heard of the famous gunpowder plot, but few people know details about Guy Fawkes' life or the motivations behind why he and his friends wanted to blow up Parliament in the first place. Even though this is a biography of his life, Guy Fawkes is really a very small part of the larger story. In order to fully understand the motivations behind the gunpowder plot, we first need to examine the conflicts between English Catholics and Protestants at that time. For a large part of human history, the most powerful religion in the world was the Roman Catholic Church. If a country was Catholic, its citizens looked up to the reigning pope as their religious leader. And in the minds of some, this authority was more important than the loyalty to the actual king or queen, because whoever has access to God has access to your mortal soul. In a lot of ways, the Protestant Reformation was a way to remove all of the power being held by the popes and bishops. It was sort of like cutting out the middleman for the average person's access to God. Because, you see, Catholics are taught that if you want your sins to be forgiven, you have to tell a priest every bad thing you've ever done in confession. A priest is sworn to secrecy, kind of like a therapist. But even so, everyone had the knowledge that these men held all of the deepest, darkest secrets of their congregation. Confession, it wasn't just encouraged, it's mandatory, and even the smallest sin left unsaid could mean you're going to hell. On top of that, Catholic Mass was said in Latin, so everyone needed to study the language. For the uneducated peasants, they needed to rely on a translation from their priest. Basically, the religion is set up in a way where priests and the Pope were given a huge amount of power over their congregation. In 1558, Elizabeth declared that there should be a settlement, which declared all English citizens must convert to Protestantism. Bishops that were formerly a part of the Catholic Church must renounce their loyalty to the Pope if they wanted to live. It was now mandatory for every English person to go to Protestant church services every Sunday, and they were taking attendance. If anyone missed one too many services, they were fined or even sent to jail. After hearing about
Wow. That's pretty harsh. Sorry, I just had to.
this, Pope Pius V excommunicated Elizabeth from the Catholic Church. In 1570, he commanded a papal bull that encouraged all Catholics to depose her. Basically, this meant that they should no longer be loyal to their queen. He called her Elizabeth, the pretended Queen of England and the servant of crime. You can probably see why this was problematic, because Catholics in the country were now seen as enemy agents. People in the lower classes, they were quick to convert to Protestantism. They could not afford to pay the hefty fines, and many of the illiterate peasants couldn't speak or read Latin anyway. It was an easy choice to make, and a symbol that they were loyal to their queen. But for the educated people of the upper class, this was not such an easy conversion. For one thing, this was taking away the freedom to choose their religion, and there were plenty of people who still truly believed that the Catholic Church was the one true church. These people, they were called recusants, which comes from the Latin word recusare, which means to refuse. For these people, who broke the law and continued to practice their Catholic faith, they believed that they were fighting for their immortal souls is quite the motivation. Since so much of the religion relies on a priest to say mass and give confession, recusant Catholics began to hide priests in their homes. It was completely illegal, and harboring a priest was punishable by death. If a family was Catholic, the royal guard would show up unannounced at all times of day and ransack their homes looking for hidden priests. Upper-class Catholic families who refused to attend Protestant Mass, they continued to pay expensive fines to the point where they were losing all of their family's inheritance. Many English Catholics, they were forced to move to Flanders, which was a safe zone. After Elizabeth I's death, the Scottish King, James VI, took over the throne and became King James I of England. Catholic citizens had no idea how his reign would be any different than Elizabeth's, and they waited to see what would happen next. So there's not very much that is known about Guy Fawkes' childhood, except that he was born in 1570 in York, England, to Edward and Edith Fawkes. His family had been Protestant, and his father even worked for the Church of England. They were law-abiding Protestants who went to church every Sunday. His mother came from a long line of Catholics, but she chose to give up her faith in favor of conforming. Guy Fawkes' father, he died when he was 8 years old, and his mother was a widow for years before she decided to marry a Catholic man. They began practicing the faith in secret, and they baptized Guy and his siblings in a secret ceremony in the St. Michael le Belfry Church. He attended St. Peter's School in York, which had a lot of recusant Catholic teachers and students. He was able to attend Mass in the homes of people who were hiding priests. As an adult, he chose to continue practicing that Catholic faith, and he became passionate about trying to protect it. At some point, Guy Fawkes is said to have gotten married and had a son. There are records from 1590 that a man named Guy Fawkes married a woman named Maria Pauline, and a birth certificate shows that their son, Thomas Fawkes, was born. When Guy Fawkes was 21 years old, he would have been old enough to take out his inheritance. That same year, there are documents of a lease and a 3.5-acre piece of land and home being signed by Guy Fawkes. This included the stamp of an image with a falcon, which was his family crest. He entered the service of Anthony Browne, the first Viscount of Montagu, as a footman. At that time, working in the service of a lord was considered to be a very respectable job among the lower class, especially compared to being a farmer. But for whatever reason, Browne did not like Guy Fawkes, so he fired him. Back then, your reputation was everything, and it must have been difficult for him to get another job without a good letter of recommendation. He managed to work for Browne's grandson after Anthony Browne's death. From the records, it would seem that he struggled to maintain steady employment, so at 21 years old, he left England and moved to Flanders. He fought together with the Spanish army to do his part in the 80-Year War. At that time, Spain was considered to be the protector of the Catholic faith, and during the war, they were fending off Dutch Protestants in the Netherlands. While fighting with the Spanish, he decided to go by the name of Guido. He was described by one of his compatriots to be of excellent good natural parts, very resolute, and universally learned, and was sought by all the most distinguished in the Archduke's camp for nobility and virtue. People say that he was very tall and muscular. He had reddish-brown hair and a beard and was basically described as being the perfect soldier. Despite having these descriptions, no one knows what Guy Fawkes truly looks like because there was never a portrait painted of his likeness. We only have the caricatures that depicted him after his death, and these were mostly drawn in such a way that made him look like a villain. In most images, he has black hair and a beard with an upturned moustache. After King James I came into power, Catholics waited with bated breath to see what would happen next. A recusant Catholic man named Thomas Percy was a cousin of Henry Percy, the 8th Earl of Northumberland. Even though he was not a lord himself, Percy was able to take it upon himself to request an audience with the king. He asked for mercy on behalf of English Catholics. Wanting to gain popularity with his new English subjects, James was vague and made sure not to make any promises. It was still very early in his reign, and he was not sure yet what he should do about the tensions between Protestants and Catholics. He essentially told Percy not to worry because he personally had no ill will towards Catholics. Percy believed that King James was going to offer some kind of relief and that he might be getting ready to repeal Queen Elizabeth I's laws. Percy was very happy about this, and he returned to tell his friends and family that they no longer had to worry about being persecuted for their faith. Some even hoped that maybe James would convert to Catholicism and that the entire country would revert back to practicing the one true faith. For about a year, English Catholics were able to live a normal life. James temporarily stopped collecting fees that recusant Catholics were required to pay for skipping the Protestant service. He also did not push for his guard to search Catholic homes for harbored priests. However, the laws made by Elizabeth I were kept in place. He had not repealed them because he was waiting to see what the reaction would be from his Protestant Parliament. In the summer of 1604, the members of Parliament, they finally noticed that Catholics were not being persecuted anymore, and they began to push King James to come down hard on them. The way they felt about the Catholics was similar to communists in the Cold War. Many of them believed that if they were not stamped out, they would cause an uprising. So James brought back the same laws that Elizabeth I had put in place. Suddenly, Catholic homes were being searched once again, and they were being treated like criminals. The Catholic people...
You know, I have to say that I like this video because this guy is really breaking it down, like to the point where I'm not lost. You know, I'm following along. You know, I never knew all this was going on. You know, like as sort of leading up to this point of why it's, you know, maybe why he did what he did or why it's even celebrated. But man, oh man, how rough that had to be. Jeez, for what you believe in. But I'm sure that's, you know, throughout history, you know, many people had their struggles fighting for what they believe in, I'm sure.
People in England, they had lived so long being oppressed, but the thing that triggered their anger was the false sense of hope. They felt betrayed by King James, and it was enough to make some want to kill him. Even though Guy Fawkes is the one who is most remembered for the gunpowder plot, the ringleader was actually a man named Robert Catesby. He began making plans in 1603 and first recruited a man named Thomas Winter. Catesby and Winter, they rode to Spain because they had associates who were Catholic there. Spain was also designated as the protector of the Catholic faith. Since Catholics were being persecuted once again, they begged for help from the Spanish to stop King James from killing their people. However, the Spanish, they were not interested in getting involved.
Denied.
Catesby and Winter, they returned to England and decided if they were going to find someone to help, it would have to be at home. The people they found were John Wright and Thomas Percy. Winter had gone to school with Guy Fawkes, and he seemed like the perfect candidate to help them out with the plot. After all, Fawkes had plenty of experience fighting in Spain, and he knew a lot about gunpowder. Fawkes was smart, and he knew how to stay cool under pressure. In May of 1604, the five men were spotted together at London's Duck and Drake Inn. They whispered about their plot, and they swore an oath of loyalty and secrecy. The group was biding their time, trying to figure out the finer details of the plan as time went on. Thomas Percy had the resources to purchase a property in London that was very close to the Palace of Westminster. Guy Fawkes began to live with him, posing as a footman named John Johnson. This way, they'd never seem out of the ordinary to anyone who witnessed them around town. At that time, it was not uncommon for men to buy gunpowder, especially if they planned to sail overseas. They needed the powder to use their guns and cannons and defend themselves from pirates. The only problem was that they'd need to buy small quantities over a long period of time in order to not raise suspicions. Guy Fawkes would use his connections to slowly gather a cache of gunpowder barrels that were left over from ships entering the harbour and bring them back to Thomas Percy. At the time, the Palace of Westminster had a collection of smaller buildings. Lords and members of the upper class would come and go from these buildings on a regular basis without being stopped by security. The rules were very relaxed, and it was actually easy for Thomas Percy to rent a storage space in the basement below the palace, claiming that it was for his cousin, the Earl of Northumberland, to store firewood for winter. The day of Parliament kept getting delayed, and the group of conspirators grew from 5 to 13 men. Unfortunately for them, though, the extended time, combined with the greater number of people who were being told about the plot, meant that it was far more likely that the secret was going to get out. A Catholic man named Lord Monteagle was preparing to be present at Parliament. A masked man handed a letter to one of Monteagle's servants, and it was presented to him immediately. It said, "My lord, out of the love I bear to some of your friends, I have a care for your preservation. Therefore, I would advise you, as you tender your life, to devise some excuse to shift your attendance at this Parliament, for though there be no appearance of any stir, yet, I say, they shall receive a terrible blow." Even though it was late at night, Lord Monteagle quickly told his servants to ready the horses so that he could deliver the letter to Robert Cecil, the spymaster and Secretary of State to King James. Historians have debated over the theories of who actually wrote the anonymous letter. It could have been one of the 13 conspirators. It may even have been Monteagle himself writing a fake letter after hearing letters through the Catholic recusant grapevine. He was awarded £500 per year for his loyalty to the crown. Back then, that was a small fortune. Even more historians believe that it was Robert Cecil. He was the spy master after all, and some believe that he knew about the gunpowder plot for a long time and orchestrated the entire scene to make himself seem like the hero. On the 4th of November, there was an extensive search of the Palace of Westminster. At first, they didn't find anything that concerned them, and they were beginning to believe that the letter was a hoax. But later that day, it was brought to the Royal Guard's attention that there were cellars underneath the palace that had not yet been searched. A royal official named Sir Thomas Knivett was told that one of them was being used for storing firewood, so he led a group of Royal Guards to search the area. When they arrived, they found Guy Fawkes guarding the firewood. Instead of wearing the clothes of a watchman, Fawkes was dressed in his riding boots, spurs, hat, and cloak as if he was getting ready to jump on a horse at any moment. They moved the wood piles aside to reveal 36 barrels of gunpowder. The Royal Guards searched him and found a box of long matches. Fawkes, he was immediately arrested. On November the 6th, King...
Gosh, man. Let me know down in the comments real quick, for those of you that know about this, who do you think wrote it? You know, who do you think snitched? To think of how close they came. Wow. How different would it have been? Jeez.
King James wanted to meet Guy Fawkes face to face. He interviewed him, asking if he had any regret. He genuinely wanted to know how anyone could be so ruthless and be willing to kill so many people, even the young children who would have been present at Parliament. Fawkes said that his only regret was that his plan had failed. Fawkes still called himself John Johnson, and he refused to give up the names of his co-conspirators. King James ordered that Fawkes be tortured and interrogated. He was suspended by manacles and then put on the rack so that his arms and legs were stretched and popped out of their sockets. He eventually caved and gave his confession. In the before and after of his signature, we can see that he could hardly write his own name after enduring so much pain. While Guy Fawkes was being tortured, the rest of the conspirators, they were on the run. Robert Catesby began to announce to the villagers that King James was dead, and he called for the Catholics to rise up and reclaim their rightful place in the kingdom. They rode from town to town, but instead of the huge army he expected, there were only about 40 men who decided to follow him. Ironically, Catesby and his men, they accidentally blew themselves up with their own gunpowder that they'd brought with them. Without Guy Fawkes there to help them with his expertise, they thought that in order to dry out the damp, they should sprinkle their gunpowder in front of an open fireplace. It exploded, of course, and one of the men went blind. The rest...
Wow, I didn't even know that. What? Alright, I'll stop pausing so much. At the end of this video, I'll give my full, okay.
The rest were now burned and injured. One man asked Robert Catesby what they were going to do next. He replied, "We mean here to die." On November the 8th, the sheriff of Warwickshire showed up with a small army of 200 men. There was a shootout between the two groups. The weakened Catholic men did their best to go out fighting, but it was clear that the King's Guard was going to overpower them. Robert Catesby was shot, but he crawled to the nearby chapel. He was found on the floor of the church, hugging a statue of the Virgin Mary. The men who were left alive were taken prisoner and sentenced to hang in the gallows along with Guy Fawkes. On the 31st of January 1606, Guy Fawkes and his fellow conspirators were found guilty of treason, and their punishment would have been to be hanged, drawn, and quartered. This meant that a man was dragged through the streets before he was hanged in the gallows. But just before he was about to choke to death, they would let him go. As he gasped for breath, they would dig a knife into his stomach and pull out his entrails.
Jeez.
Then they chopped off his arms and his legs while he was still alive. Then the four quarters of the body were taken to the four corners of England. As Guy Fawkes stood in the crowd, King James declared that these Catholic traitors were trying to blow up the entire island of England. This would have been physically impossible, of course, but it was enough to make the people extremely angry. They were screaming and booing, calling him a traitor. Before they could torture him, Guy Fawkes jumped, breaking his own neck. Even though he was not alive to feel the pain, they still went through with cutting his body apart into pieces. The gunpowder plot had very nearly succeeded, and if it were not for an anonymous letter, Guy Fawkes may have actually succeeded at lighting the fuse. If the barrels of gunpowder had exploded, it would have been powerful enough to bring down the palace and nearby buildings. It would have killed the king and the princes, as well as some of the most powerful noblemen in the country. This would have left the throne to James's daughter, Princess Elizabeth. They had hoped that since she was so young, she would be easy to manipulate as a sort of puppet. Many believed that Robert Catesby would have eventually gotten more Catholics to follow him, and this would have erupted into an English civil war. After this incident, Parliament passed the Thanksgiving Act of 1606, which was a law that English citizens must pray and give thanks to God that the terrorists did not kill the king. That day became known as Guy Fawkes Night, or Bonfire Night, and it's celebrated every year on November the 5th. People usually celebrate by building a large bonfire and burning life-size dummies of Guy Fawkes. There was also a fireworks show to symbolize the explosions that never happened. Since then, everyone has always remembered the 5th of November. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do give us a thumbs up below, and do not forget to subscribe. We've got brand new videos just like this several times a week. If you're looking for something else to watch from me, why not check out my other channel called Highlight History? You'll find a link to that below. And as always, thank you for watching.
Okay, wow. A little bit of that I did know. A lot of that I didn't know. That was absolutely wow. Like I said earlier in the video, who do you think did it? Let me know in the comments if you have any idea. I have no idea. Surprise, surprise. I did know about the burning the, the statues and all those things. The paper mache. I've seen videos of that before, and I'm doing research on this, and it was very interesting. And I know that y'all, without getting, too political about it, y'all do more current people, political figures and all those things. And I found that very, very interesting. But that was a good one. Thanks to my friend out there for watching this. Thanks for that, bud. I appreciate it. Hopefully y'all get to see this while it's still November the 5th, over there before it's too late. If not, I apologize. I'll try to get it out soon enough, but y'all know how it goes. But y'all post down in the comments. Let me know if y'all liked it, and if you didn't, I'm sorry, but I try. Hit the subscribe button. It would really help me out. Hit that bell icon so you know when I post up a new video. I try to get to them whenever I can. Sometimes I have technical difficulties, and sometimes the YouTube guidelines come crashing down on me saying I can't use a video, and I did all the recording and editing for nothing. But that just, that it happens sometimes, and hopefully I'll be able to get this one out to you guys. And y'all keep the suggestions coming, and I'll keep, doing these for you guys. You guys are awesome. I'll say it every time. You guys are totally awesome. I really appreciate each and every one of you. Until the next one, y'all, this is Johnny Wheeler, and I'm out.